Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Box Report, episode 331. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, usual cast of characters, our regular co-host, Gail from Communities Digital News, Daniel from the Inscribing for Boxing News. What's going on, lady and gent?
Hey everybody, we're heading into the holiday weekend. Thought we didn't have a lot to talk about, but I think we might be wrong about that.
Yeah, some late breaking news that came down the pipe. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report live YouTube show, podcast, as well as website discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if you're concerned with sweet science, it will get talked about. If you want to check out all information on this show, please go to the website p4pboxingreport.com and repeat that p4pboxingreport.com. You look throughout the page, the top center of the page, you'll find the links to where to find the show all over the podcast realm on Spreaker, um, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, any and everywhere else in between. Um, you check below that, you can find where to find the show on social media platforms. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on IG, we're on Tumblr. You can also find links where you can donate. Let donation, excuse me, let donation be the best nation. Got a Cash Me PayPal donation link. And last but certainly not least, link to my online coaching page. I am an online coach for Beachbody. Please check out Beachbody on Demand. If you're looking to get yourself right for the summer physically, if you're looking to step your fitness game up to the next level, or I do monthly Let's Build Together group challenges. If you're interested in joining that fun yet challenging group challenge, which consists of programs within Beachbody on Demand. Also, check out the 2 week free trial throughout the year. Beachbody on Demand, there's a 2 week trial where basically you can sign up, and for 2 weeks you get free access to any and all programs on Beachbody on Demand, whether it's the P90X series, the old classic of that, the Insanity Asylum, the 6 weeks of the work, which is real challenging. The 645 program that's coming out in a few weeks, or the boxing base program. If you're looking for a boxing base program, I suggest 10 rounds program based on boxing, cardio, and weightlifting. Interested in any of that, please go to my coaching, the link to my coaching page on Pound for Pound Boxing Report site. Let's get things going. Recapping what went down this weekend. A lot of fights this weekend. Um, I will go to you. Let's start differently here. No. Let me take that back. Let's go to the regular lineup, which I originally had. Let's go to Vegas Gale and the return of Loma, Vasiliy Lomachenko, former pound for pound king, uh, not just admired but feared. Lost his WBC, WBO titles. Excuse me, lost his WBA, WBO titles, right? Unified titles at lightweights to Teofimo Lopez October of last year. Subsequent surgery afterwards, he's making his first returns to the ring since. Fought a very tough guy, and Masayoshi Nakatani fought the aforementioned Lopez. Though it with the distance, I felt that Lopez was forced to struggle throughout large segments of that fight. Well, he didn't force Loma to struggle because Lomachenko pretty much had his way. Got cut in the first round, but Loma being the professional he is, he just shook that off. And starting from the second round, he took control. It was the same old Loma, the skill, the footwork, the unique style. Had Nakatani befuddled, while at the same time he was punishing throughout with head and body punches, put him down twice. And, classic Vasiliy Lomachenko. Your assessment of the fight, Gail?
If this had been before the Loma fight, we would have all said, "Oh yeah, same old, no Moschenko, the Matrix, high tech, the whole thing." But it wasn't, and we saw that diminished performance against Teofimo Lopez. Lomachenko clearly recalibrated, buckled down, took this very seriously, and knew what he had to do. To his credit, he executed. And it was important, particularly because of the fact Lopez Jr. had been taken the distance by Nakatani. So not only was he motivated to show his old form, he was hell bent on getting Nakatani out of there before Lopez had, which of course he didn't get him out at all. He went the whole distance. So now he's got something to trash talk Lopez Jr. about. He's drummed up now very sincere interest in a rematch. Before this fight, I would have thought rematch, I don't know. And a lot of people, including his own team, me, a lot of critics out there said, just give it up, go back down a division. Heck, go 130 is chock full of guys to work with. Even 126, I don't know that he could make it, but stop playing around in these upper weight divisions. He ignored everybody, and he turned out to be right. He bet on himself, and he won. It was a good fight, and it was the Lomachenko, the old Lomachenko that we were used to seeing before Lopez Jr. tangled with him. So now we've got to look forward and see what the future holds for both of them. But rematch, if it's going to happen, isn't certain to happen anytime soon, which we can get into.
Let's get into it right now. I'll follow up with you, Gail. For those who do not know or missed the fight, during the broadcast, the ESPN talked with Teofimo Lopez Sr., Lopez Jr.'s dad and trainer, right? And he said that they are open to a rematch. Before last night, Teofimo or Team Lopez was really hesitant, resistant to a rematch against Loma. They said now that they're up for it on one condition, that it happens immediately after Teofimo Lopez Jr. Upcoming fight against Kambosos, whenever that happens. Last week we talked about how Teofimo tested positive for COVID-19. He now update on that. He's vacationing in Italy, and now subsequent tests has found him to be negative. So whenever the fight with Kambosos, they said immediately after that they're willing to fight Loma. Thoughts on that rematch, should it happen? And if so, when? I personally think it will not happen until early 2022 at the earliest. But yeah, we could see a rematch between these two, Gail. Talk about it.
I think we will if all the other parts of the puzzle fall into place. And the timeline could be a problem. We all know that the Lopez Jr. Kambosos fight was called off when Lopez tested positive for COVID. And there have been reports, different levels of verification, saying that Lopez Jr. was very ill. He's known to have asthma. That's a concern with a disease that affects your lungs. The fact that he's in Italy, is sort of interesting. Vacationing. Does that really mean he's in Italy away from prying boxing media and people who could check up on him, and in a country where they've had to treat a lot of COVID? Call me a little bit suspicious. In any event, let's hope that reports that he's recovering and he's tested negative are true. That'd be great news. However, we've seen several fighters who had COVID who didn't feel ill, by the way, particularly like Jamel Herring, have a really, really rough time in their first fight back, admitting to really being wiped out, surprisingly so. And Alexander Povetkin, same thing. Although he reported being fairly ill, he came back. He didn't have a great performance in his rematch with Dillian Whyte, and he retired. So Lopez Jr. needs to be extremely cautious about coming back into that fight with Kambosos too quickly. Initially, Triller rescheduled the whole card for August 14th. That's not happening. They've now pushed it out to perhaps September. I wouldn't be real surprised if that didn't happen. And once again, COVID gets a say. Not that George Kambosos has had any reports or any concerns. However, Australia is now seeing a surge in this Delta variant to the point it is affecting the crowd and the venue for the upcoming Tim Tszyu fight next week. That is a concern. So stay tuned, everybody. Who knows how it's going to fall out? But should it all come around eventually, someday, at some point, somewhere in this world that fight takes place, it looks like we will get the Loma Lopez rematch, and I think that's something to look forward to now, based on what we got to see of Loma on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a perfect setup to a rematch between the two. The question is when it's going to happen. And as you just mentioned, COVID-19 continues to rear its ugly head and have an impact on the sport and really in the world, really. Really in the world. But yeah, COVID-19, the pandemic that will not die, unfortunately. I'll take over this next fight on the undercard of Lomachenko and Nakatani. Um, Rising middleweight prospect Janibek Alimkhanuly fought former world champion Rob Brant, quote unquote world champion. He had a regular belt, WBA version, beat Murata a couple of years ago, lost and fought for a rematch, and he got blown out in 2 rounds. Anyway, they fought on the undercard, and I have to say, and I'll go to you on this one, Daniel. Uh, Buddy McGirt, his trainer, and Egas Klimas, his manager, uh, even before this bout, was talking about how they believe that Janibek is ready for a world title bout, right? And after this important, and I'm starting to believe it now. After this performance, he's made Brant quit in 8 rounds, and he was awfully impressive. I saw his last fight. I'm like, okay, he looks like he could be the goods.
Yeah, he looked well prepared. He was in control throughout the fight. There was never any hesitance about the situation, but it made you feel bad for Brant. And you notice in the later rounds because Brant's team, remember Bomac, that group that's with Terrence Crawford, they were not used to the situation that they were put in. Unfortunately, in that area, they're used to being the guys that are dominating or their fighter that's dominating the fights. And as Brand was going on, it just looked bad. It just looked worse as going on. And I'm glad they ended it in the corner. I know Brand tried to talk them out of, I think, going back out into the ninth. But luckily, cooler heads prevailed, taking too much punishment. And what's going to be interesting is this kid is ranked, I think, in the top 5 in at least 2 or 3 of the sanctioning bodies. I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had muted. I was informed by Gail that had background music. That was me. My apologies. Got the game going on in the background. But he's ranked number 2 by the BO at 160. And it wasn't the fact that he won, Daniel. It was how he won. Brant is known for having a good jab and a high work rate. And Janibek, I thought, got his respect early with power, and he was able to get off with his own jab. I like how composed he was. I like the combinations. He kept going up and down on Rob Brant. To me, he intimidated him, punked him a bit,
Yeah,
because Brant was supposed to, when you face in that situation, switch it up, maybe come forward, get inside the reach and the power, and he didn't do it all fight long. That was because Janibek A was that good, and two, he felt the punch every time he got hit. So yeah, this was a thorough beatdown.
yeah. Now, this is the situation now that they're facing when it comes to this kid. Okay, you said W2 WBO. I think he's also tuned to WBC. So him and Jaime Munguia might be on a collision course to see who actually faces a champion. Because even though this probably was, like I said, WBA qualifier as well, I really, really doubt that. Remember, this kid's from Kazakhstan, that he's going to derail his countryman Gennady and getting that big payday with Murata. So this kid's gonna be ready. It could be a situation where we might see him and Munguia, whether it's on ESPN or the Zone, pretty soon. If early 22 things will shape up, or if there's no deal made for Miguel to face either Andrade or Maul.
I know Munguia looked good in his last bout, but look, I know Janibek has had 10 fights as a pro. If I'm Oscar, stay away from this dude. Munguia, we touched on this last week. His main issue, his main drawback is his defense. And Janibek, this dude is a sharp fighter who can really box with power from the southpaw stance. I know Munguia can hit as well, and but nah, he's too open. His defense is too leaky, even with someone with such limited professional experience. Uh, Oscar better keep Munguia back in the cut and wait for a possible fight against the winner of Golovkin and Murata. He don't want to ruin that investment fighting this dude.
We'll have to wait and see because right now they're 1-2. Right now, it has to be the decision made. Either you push, I would probably say push Munguia to the WBO direction. Have him fight Andrade. At least it won't get muddled in the whole network mess.
Yeah, so we'll see where he can go. Yeah, this dude is ready. I know he has a limited number of fights, but at the very least, it's time for him to step up the competition even more. He's 28 years old. Put him right in there. They put him in, they got him on the fast track. I say, why not? I think he's that good. Let's go from Vegas to the ATL Showtime pay-per-view card headlined by Gervonta Davis. Has a belt at 130, has a belt at 135. His last fight was at 130, sensational 6-round KO of Leo Santa Cruz in San Antonio. So he's moving up 2 divisions to fight. He moved up 2 divisions to fight Mario Barrios, Gil. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to see this fight in full. 1, because I do have a job, and 2, I was covering the Lomachenko card for Three Kings Boxing. From what I've read and from the highlights that I saw, it seemed that Tank had some problems early, some issues early with Barrios, the taller, naturally bigger Barrios. But whatever you want to say about Gervonta Davis's boxing ability, Gail, or lack thereof, or the fact that his game may not be all the way complete, the one thing you can't take away from him is his power. And that's what ultimately served the difference in this bout. He stopped him in the 11th. And yeah, it seems that when Tank is in any kind of trouble, or when he's behind it anyway, he got that punch in both hands, and it proved it again against Barrios.
That was the big question, right? That we all wanted to see. Was Davis's power going to carry up with him? And it did. What got him into a hole, and it was a hole he dug for himself, is his inactivity the first few rounds. In the first 4 rounds, according to CompuBox, the first 4 rounds total, let me reemphasize this. If your eyes saw it, you know what I'm saying. He landed 11 punches total. That's a bit frightening. Barros was fighting smart, using his reach advantage, using his height advantage, staying out of range. Now, he wasn't a whole lot busier, but he was enough busier than 11 punches in 4 rounds that he rolled up the early rounds. And at the midway point of the fight, the scorecards were even. But then what was a chess match at distance turned into a proper street fight. What we hoped we'd see. And Davis, he started turning up the heat. He either decided that Barrios really didn't have much to offer or hurt him, or decided, hell, I gotta get busy. And that's when he started becoming much more of a bully. He crowded Barrios. Now the game plan in the fight was to his advantage, taking away that distance and reach, crowding him, not allowing him to use it. That's exactly what you do when you take on a taller fighter. You get right up in their chest and in their face. Now, you can only do that if you've got the firepower to back it up. Tank does. He deployed all his favorite weapons. He made it stick by the 11th round, and he celebrated with a pretty impressive back somersault off the post. Boom, a win. And, Barrios said, hey, the better man won. I gave everything I had, and I hope everyone enjoyed the fight. And, Barrios got quite the hero's welcome from his fans in San Antonio, and good for them if they enjoyed the fight and they liked the action. They celebrated their guy, loss or not. And, he'll be back, and hopefully he'll learn from this. Davis said he knew when Barrios was hurt. He knew he had to catch him at the right time, and he did. So now we're in discussions about what's next.
Yeah, and it's gonna be interesting to see where Mayweather, his promoter, what he decides to do with him next. Keep him at 140 and fight. Regis Probert has already went to social media and called him out, basically told him, congratulated him on the win, but says, if you dare think of fighting me, you better drink, you better wake up from your dream, right? So he basically have his way with him. So should he stay at 140, see what happens with Josh Taylor, or should he move back down to 135? I know his last fight was at 130, but I don't think he can consistently make 130 anymore. He's more of a lightweight anyway. Does talks pick up again for a fight against Ryan Garcia? You got Devin Haney still around. So what is he going to do? What is Floyd going to do? I would like to see them move at 130 to move back down to 135 because there's unfinished business there. But we're talking Tank here and we're talking Floyd here, and they're going to go where the money is. So future still be determined. It's still be determined. On the undercard, Daniel, you had a very interesting fight at 154 pounds between WBC eliminator between Erickson and Lubin, who's still on the comeback trail following his surprising first in the round loss to Mel Charlo a couple of years back. He fought Banana Rosario, who's a former unified champion, and got to give it up to Lubin here, Daniel. He took control early. From the highlights that I've seen, stopped him in 6. Talk about the fight if you want, but Lubin says he's ready for the best at 154. Do you think following this performance, following this stoppage win, that he's ready to get back in there and have a rematch with Mel Charlo?
It's going to depend on a couple of factors, but when I'm focused on this fight first, this fight showed a lot of Lubin because Rosario, we have to remember, he is not a slouch. He isn't a pushover. He's a tough character. And he rocked Reuben, I think, in the 4th or 5th round, near the end. After he himself got rocked. So this was a really, really good fight. I mean, like you said, ultimately, Lubin won in the 6th. Lubin's always had that ability to bring himself back from a fight after he's been hurt. What happened with Mel is he got caught cold. Everybody saw that he got caught cold, and he just wasn't going to make it at that point. He may be ready, yeah. He's had a couple more belts. He's learned a couple of things, and honestly, Mel, we have to see how it's going to look in this fight and his fight coming up, because things outside the ring do take factors. We know there's family drama in the Charlo household, and they may come into play in a potential rematch against Lubin. But the kid's right. I've always been high on Lubin. Like, he's been one of the best young prospects for a while. He had a shot Like I said, got caught cold, but I definitely believe he's ready now.
At the very least, and I want first of all give a shout out to Yolanda Cortez, Olaf the Mighty. Thanks for joining us. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to ask or mention a comment here in the live YouTube chat. At the very least, Daniel and Gail, Lubin has earned an opportunity for a rematch, or put it this way, Mel Charlo, he's going to fight Castano for undisputed at 154. I think that fight is going to happen in August. No, in July. July, excuse me, in July. And at the very least, I think Lubin has earned the right to say, "I want the winner of that." Um, he's worked. He had the setback. He's worked his way back up to number one status in terms of contention. And yeah, to your point, he got hurt in that fight in round 4, but he recovered. And skill wise, he's up there with anybody at 154. That includes Mel Charlo, and hopefully he'll get his shot late this year, early next year. Last fight we're going to talk about here before we go on to some news notes. Julio Cesar Martinez. He's had a couple of fights postponed because of injury and whatnot. He finally returned to the ring against a guy by the name of Cordova. I believe they're friends. They sparred each other in the past, I believe. And whoever wants to take this fight, please do. Martinez, excuse me, won by 6-round KO. But from my reading of the fight, again, I was at work and I was once I got home, I was covering another card. From my reading and from what I read on Twitter timeline, Cordova was giving Martinez some problems early in the fight, but just like Gervonta Davis, who we just talked about, Martinez, he has that equalizer in one punch power. And it was that power that got Cordova in trouble and eventually took him out. So whoever wants to speak on this fight, please do.
This was fun. That fight was fun because you could tell that these guys spar each other because there's a little bit of gamesmanship. Cordova was bobbing in and out in many ways, trying to frustrate Martinez because Martinez did look a little bit stiff, but he was catching him, Cordova, with shots as he was going in and out, and good, accurate shots too. Ultimately, that's what won it for him because he wound up hurting Cordova pretty well, and he hurt him enough where even as he was throwing back, the referee stopped the fight. It was a really, really good fight. Very, very entertaining fight. I'm like, Martinez probably has to get a couple more fights to get the full range back. But like I said, between 108 and bantamweight, like these fighters are entertaining. These champions are entertaining. There wasn't anything as far as this fight you could tell that you say it was boring or corny. Everything was well. Cordova didn't lose a thing in this fight. If anything, he probably earned himself another title shot with another sanctioning body with this. So it's gonna be a fun way to see it going on. But I'm glad to see Martinez back in the ring and really, really sharp looking victory.
I'll comment here before I give some word on this fight from Olaf in the chat. Going to put it out here for public. He says Lubin. I think it means Lubin looks sensational. Just another PBC fighter to mix it up at top level at 154. Jeison Rosario incurred permanent damage to the body, and Lubin definitely studied that and stayed on that body. He also says Charlo permanently damaged Rosario's body is what he meant. I think it's some terminal damage that's basically demoted Rosario to journeyman if he plans to continue on with his career. To your point, Olaf, Rosario, he lost his titles to Charlo, and Mel finished him off with a body shot simple jab to the body almost to just decapitate him, it seems. And he did some subtle things to the body throughout that fight. It could be a case. I don't know if it's a case of him internal damage or it's just a fact that all along we didn't find out until these fights that Banana Rosario is just one of these fighters who's weak up the gut. And because he's weak up the gut, Lubin noticed that and as you said, make that his focus. So ultimately, whether it was him exposing Banana's deficiencies, taking body shots or whatever, it still was a very, very impressive performance. And it's time for him. It's time for him. A title shot looms again. As I said earlier, if he wants to say, give me the winner of Mel Charlo and Castano, early 22, late 21, I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it. In terms of Martinez, here's the thing, Daniel and Gail. If you would have asked me 6 months ago who's the best flyweights in the world, post Tanaka moving up to 115, I would have said Martinez. I have questions about that now, based on this fight. If the guy that he fought, Cordova, was able to box him and get to him with subtle shots, I think someone like Junto Nakatani could too. Nakatani, WBO champion, who has a very, very good matchup coming up in September against former 108 champion Angel Acosta. Is going to be on September, I believe, on the undercard of Valdez, his mandatory defense. For those who hadn't seen Nakatani, very good southpaw. One of these guys who makes hard fights look easy. He did it when he won the belt against Magrano. Kind of a poor man's Japanese Whitaker, dare I say. Highly skilled. The fight is going to happen in the United States with Acosta. He studied in the U.S. as a teenager. He's trained in the U.S. He wants to follow in the footsteps of Inoue, who we talked about last week. He wants to follow in the footsteps of his countryman Koiguchi, champion at 108 pounds, whose last fight was in the United States. If Nakatani wins in impressive fashion against Acosta, I would put him right up there, along with the Martinez, as the best in the world at 112. Am I drawing too much, Gail, from this fight against Cordova? Is my criticism too harsh?
I don't think so. I'm not sure that. Yeah, I think Martinez did what he needed to do. He ended it in spectacular fashion. I don't care what weight division you're at. When you've got one punch power, you've always got that opportunity to turn things. He's good. I don't know if he's great, but I'd like to see him get the chance to prove it.
What say you, Daniel? What say you, Daniel?
I think we either lost him or he's on mute.
Yeah, I think he's on mute. I'll just read a quick comment here. Last comment from Olaf regarding Lubin. He says, agreed, the Lubin is the goods. Such great power and speed. His chin is a little suspect, though. I think Daniel's on mute. On my lost connection. Hopefully we'll get him back.
Yeah, his internet isn't always the best, especially if everybody else in his area is on.
And I see something. Yeah, so we'll move on to some.
You're right. You're right, Olaf. By the way, it's interesting to me when Lubin and Hurd were, both first coming up. They were both pretty viable candidates for Prospect of the Year the same year. I don't even recall which one it was. And it was kind of a coin toss for a lot of us. Is it going to be Jared Hurd's Prospect or Rising Star or is Erickson Lubin? The Hurd kind of went mostly with Jared Hurd, no pun intended. I went with Lubin, and I thought, I think I was wrong. Initially, Hurd was the one that looked really good, that was fulfilling more of his promise. But boy, the tide has turned, and now Lubin's coming back, and now I don't feel quite so stupid for having picked Lubin over Hurd, because Hurd has definitely got his problems. He's got to straighten things out. The good news is there's so much going on for the PBC fighter universe at 154, so that's good news. They'll all stay busy.
The thing they share in common is that they've lost to a Charlo brother at 154.
Yeah.
J-Rock lost to Maul at 154 a few years back. Lubin, as we mentioned numerous times, lost to Mel. In a comparison between J-Rock and Lubin, I would say that I would give the edge to Lubin. I think he's more well-rounded. He can do more in the ring. He's more versatile. It's not that J-Rock is not good. I just think that Lubin is better. If they ever fought, I would pick Lubin to win. Faster, can move more, better hand speed, better footwork. While J-Rock is a little bit more stationary, and he can be hit. He can be hit, and he also doesn't have the greatest chin in the world. I think you're back, Daniel. The question regarding Julio Cesar Martinez, am I being too harsh here following his tough win over Cordova?
No.
Okay, I thought you was going to say something else. Let's move on to some news here. I'll go to you, Gail. Some interest. Look, we talked a few weeks back about Errol Spence fight Manny Pacquiao in August 21st, I believe. I'm hearing some background noise, Daniel. Could you put yourself on mute, please? News broke right before the show began that there may be something in the cut that could possibly derail that Spence Pacquiao bout. Could you give some insight on it, please?
So it has popped up today, as reported by Dan Raphael, who is now an independent boxing journalist with his own Substack newsletter, which is well worth subscribing to, by the way. I will give him that. It's called Fight Freaks Unite. So apparently, Paradigm Sports, who signed Pacquiao to a management agreement last year, right before the pandemic, I might add, filed a breach of contract lawsuit on Friday last week in Orange County, California. So they claim that Pacquiao did not have the right, Pacquiao and his various hangers-on, as the lawsuit calls them, didn't have the right to negotiate this fight with Errol Spence. The company says that Pacquiao's various hangers-on undermined their negotiating position and their agreement with Pacquiao, that they spoke in public claiming they were representing Pacquiao, undermined them, that Pacquiao refused to honor his obligations. He never confirmed the rights that he supposedly gave them in writing and signing a contract, and that he should be returning their advance of $3.3 million. That Pacquiao, according to this agreement, was not the one allowed to announce fights. The company is saying, as a management team, it's also responsible for all of the marketing, media, etc. So they are landing on Pacquiao like a ton of bricks, saying, we want you to stop this bout. They're also claiming that this all happened right before they were about to sign some big deal with then DAZN executive director John Skipper, who's now long gone, and Eddie Hearn from Matcher Boxing on a, quote, 4-fight deal for Pacquiao worth $100 million, including a signing bonus, with 2 fights in Saudi Arabia and one of them being against Mikey Garcia. Now, that was last summer before the pandemic, so you assume that would fast forward. Well, I could believe that there was some kind of contractual promotional squabble with money changing hands and the rights to represent Pacquiao, because there's only about 50 million people who claim they speak for Pacquiao. I mean, it's sort of like when you go to a Pacquiao fight, and virtually every person from the Philippines who's there claims to be related to him. And I mean that, everybody, which is another story. However, this argument loses massive credibility to me when the group claims they were about to sign a 4-fight deal with a guy about to turn 40 and, oh, by the way, about to become president of the Philippines, according to everything you read. So that just doesn't wash with me. Now, they also say that because this whole thing fell apart, their agreement they supposedly had with Mikey Garcia also got kicked to the curb because Mikey's mad at them. What a mess. And what it's giving us all, or should, is giving us the shakes, because we never thought that Deontay Wilder was going to succeed in court, but he did and derailed Fury Joshua. Is this going to derail Spence Pacquiao this summer? Courts don't move all that fast, especially with these civil lawsuits. So they're either going to say, you don't have any standing, it's baseless, and toss it. Or they're going to hear an argument and say, well, until we sort this thing out and then decide, until we actually decide who's in the wrong, do we let this fight continue? Or do we put an injunction in front of it and say, no, you can't have this fight before we figure this all out, which will not happen before the August date of the fight. So what a potential mess we have right here. And I'm surprised it's not getting a lot more play.
And if this goes to an arbitration, then you never know. It's just up in the air when you saw that
right.
with Fury and Joshua,
and that's the faster way to solve things. So there's a lot of wisdom to it. But man, anything can happen.
Right. I'll go to you, Daniel, based on Gail's breakdown of this breakdown of the story and the details behind all this minutia. Does this lawsuit have merit, or do you think ultimately this is frivolous and will not go anywhere, or at least will not have any real markings before the fight?
First, I'm going to respond to what you were asking me before. I had to reboot my computer, but you were not too harsh when it came to the criticism of Martinez. Like, granted, it would look like more of a sparring session was getting on, but that just tells you the quality, what we expect in the lower weight divisions. Now to this mess. Here's the biggest situation, unfortunately, is when it comes to this is Manny is not a new character to this type of situation, because before we jumped on, I said that this is probably the 10 or 11 year anniversary this year of that infamous limo ride that Manny had with Oscar De La Hoya that involved a briefcase of money. And supposedly him signing to Golden Boy to make the Floyd fight in 2010. When he previously, before, signed another agreement with Top Rank. And we saw how that ended up. That wound up sending out of court. They ultimately, Golden Boy got to cut off a good amount of Manny's pay-per-views for a little bit. But this is a similar situation where he may have been talking to somebody that may have offered him the money. And the bad part about it is you're the stage in the sport where I know Gail mentioned, like, he's 42 years old. He may or may not become president of the Philippines, depending on who runs. But at the end of the day, we've just seen Floyd Mayweather make almost that amount in a clown show recently, in the last few weeks. So what a surprise if you're going to have this situation, particularly if you decide to have Arab money involved, oil money involved. So it could be a situation where this may actually have some legs because you have to remember the Spence fight literally came out of nowhere. It came out of nowhere. And the fact that it did come out of nowhere and we didn't know what was going on when it came to the situation may leave it open for a situation where if they see contracts, if they see a clause that says, you know what, it does have some standing, like I said, and Mr. Pacquiao, you have a history of signing contracts or agreeing to terms on deals after you've agreed to terms on other deals. So there's a chance, yeah, this could be derailed in many ways. And I would feel bad if it does happen. I would feel bad for Errol Spence. But it would probably be the best opportunity when you have from Mikey Garcia, because that could be the main consolation for Manny. Just honor the Mikey Garcia fight, and maybe Spence then gets to fight somebody else because he said it. He only has 2 fights left at 147. We all know the only other fight that we would want at welterweight when it comes to Errol Spence, besides this one with Manny. So if this somehow makes Bud and Spence sit down, hash out a deal, and make Spence Crawford, I'm not going to say that I would not be unhappy with that situation.
Some comments here from the live chat. Yolanda, of course, says she's looking forward to the fight, but then upon the news that we just talked about, she says, quote unquote, 2 words, that sucks. Ivan DC says that that, let me put it up on the live feed right here. The fight goes through. He thinks that Manny will take it. Also, got to give a shout out to Mr. Beaumanier, who's commenting on Pound for Pound Box Report Twitter page. If you want to check out Pound for Pound Box Report on Twitter page, just go at P4P Boxing Report. He says on Twitter, to our earlier discussion about Tank, he says, I don't think Ryan Garcia wants to fight Tank. He never did, just in my opinion. In terms of the discussion on Lubin, he says the broadcast team mentioned Team Lubin knows that Rosario blows up, and they felt he would be weak. Wait, where does Rosario go from here? That's a good question for anybody who wants to respond to Mr. Beaumanier's question on Twitter. Do so, please. We talked a lot about Lubin and what could be up down the line for him, but in terms of Banana Rosario, what do you think is next? Daniel?
Well, Rosario,
I think both Gail and Daniel are having. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, no, you have me. Yeah, I mean, yeah. But if it's Rosario, that's going to be interesting because now the blueprint's out. He's weak to the body. And 154 is not exactly a division where they're only headhunters. So if anything, like I said, he would be a gatekeeper probably at a certain point, but he would be a really, really tough gatekeeper. And he would be the one that he would be the main gatekeeper you want to throw at a young fighter before the title fight at this stage of his career. If you can't get past Rosario at that point, then you may not be ready for a title shot. It didn't completely diminish Like I said, that the way he lost with Lubin, it ultimately what it ultimately means is that he's no longer probably at world title caliber, but he's right below that at this point.
Couple more comments from here, from Olaf the Almighty. Let me know, Gail, in the private chat if I am still sounding distorted, and I'll fix that behind the scenes. Olaf the Almighty says that. Couple more comments from here. I bet the lot on Spence already. Hopefully hopefully the fight goes through. I give Manny no shot against Spence. He also says that Rosario just gets KO to the body against anyone that can punch a little. He's got the weakest body of all time. In terms of your comment, um, give me a quick second, Yolanda, and see if I can reach you right quick and handle that situation for you. Am I still sounding a little bit distorted, Gail? Is my mic a little choppy?
I got you good enough to follow the conversation, no problem. And by the
Okay.
way, Olaf, nobody likes getting hit to the body. I mean, come on. Who likes that shit? Nobody.
Right. Uh, you mentioned the issue resolving Tim Zoo earlier and the issues with COVID. Let's talk a little bit more about that, Gail. If you have any further details to give in terms of the rising numbers in reaction to this new strain of coronavirus.
Yeah, this is a very sad situation, man. COVID is certainly calming down in the United States, but that is not the case in a lot of the rest of the world. Um, you know, the problem that's going on in Australia with rising caseloads of COVID is causing Australian officials in their different equivalent of states to um, impose new lockdown orders and new crowd control orders. Well, Tim Tszyu and Michael Zerafa have a fight scheduled next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Time, and they had a sellout crowd. They have a sellout crowd. This grudge match has been 3 years in the making between Tszyu and Zerafa. And now, first of all, the first news was that promoters said, due to the new restrictions, we're going to have to cut the attendance 50%, down to 50%. So people are saying, okay, right, it's a sellout. Now we're down to 50%. Which 50%? Who? How do you decide? Is it me? How do you know? What a mess. What a mess. Well, in the last just couple of hours, Michael Zerafa has now said, listen, I'm refusing to travel. I'm not going out there. COVID's a problem out there. I don't want to fight if it's a problem. Let's, just postpone the fight, cancel the fight. So, this long-awaited fight, which is a big, big deal in Australia. Tim Tszyu is becoming a major star in Australian sports, not just boxing. And now to have this fight on the brink of potentially being canceled is just a disaster. Really, really a shame. And for a lot of us in the United States who are going to have a pretty quiet boxing weekend because of the 4th of July holiday, honestly, this is the next big fight on tap, this fight on July 7th. So we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, we'll keep you updated on that situation. In terms of your question, Yolanda, um, our Ladies Love Boxing show, Gail and I have talked about it. The plan is to do that show, and for those who don't know, who are unaware about our Ladies Love Boxing shows, it's just basically an episode in which yours truly has an all women's panel, a panel of all women uh, to talk boxing, to chop it up about the sweet science. We plan to do our next rendition of that the week of either the week of Pacquiao Spence before that fight or the week after that fight. And if you want to join us, please just send me a message via Twitter, private message via Twitter, and we can work something out. So that answers your question. Um, Yeah, in terms of Zerafa, yeah, it's given Zerafa's concern, I have doubts that fight is going to happen. I know Team Zoo, they want the fight. Um, they want to keep the ball rolling, but yeah, he's also ranked high, just like Lubin is at 154. And if Lubin doesn't get the winner of Mel and Castano, Tim Zoo probably will. So are they willing to go through all of this just to risk a possible title shot down the road? To me, it doesn't make sense. Uh, if there's this much concerns, if the numbers are rising to this degree, fall back, and try to reschedule either for another day or just do what you have to do to wait and get that title shot down the road. Um, Given the concerns, given that we are still in a pandemic, folks, I just don't think it's worth the risk at this point. Um, let's move on to any other news developments y'all want to talk about before we get on to oh, I forgot. I forgot. My apologies, Gail and Daniel, specifically to you, Gail. There was a fight that took place last night, a doubleheader, I believe, on Fox, BBC on Fox, a super middleweight bout and a cruiserweight bout. I was unable to see it because I was at work, but you did, and you was raving over both of those bouts. So I'll give you the opportunity to talk about it now.
I think a lot of people this card got by them. This was a PBC card, PBC on Fox Network, fight night on a rare Sunday. And some of us are old enough to remember Sunday night fights on things like NBC and on Wide World of Sports and stuff like that. But they're rare anymore. So here's this Sunday night fight from the Armory in Minneapolis. Not any really substantial names, should we say. But let me tell you, if you missed it, if you slept on it, the full undercard was on FS1, and then the network.
Yeah, FS1, my bad.
And then the main card was carried by Fox Network. And wow, thank goodness the American public got to see on the big network, Fox Sports, these fights. It didn't even matter if they knew these guys or not. So first of all, we had just kind of a classic barn burner fight in the first bout of the TV card. It was a super lightweight fight. Ali Rivera, who was the underdog from the Philippines, beat the previously undefeated A-side prospect by majority decision, Omar Juarez. It was razor close, and it was won on the strength of a knockdown by Rivera in the 9th round of the 10. Juarez thought he'd gotten the win, did enough. Well, apparently he didn't, but that was just the appetizer. The co-main was a cruiserweight fight. A lot of us find that cruiserweight division really fascinating. These are two young, undefeated prospects, exactly the kind of fights that we need to see more of. Two guys willing to risk their O, Brandon Glanton and F.A. Apochi. Glanton is a former NCAA football player who decided to chuck his chance at the NFL to see if his boxing dreams could be realized. What a great backstory. And he lost 80 pounds from his frame from when he played football to compete in the cruiserweight division. So think Anthony Joshua. He's a tall dude. He's ripped. He, looks amazing. F.A. Apochi is being trained by Ronnie Shields in Texas. Very promising guy. And this was the cruiserweight division of Zepeda Baranchik, with changes of fortune, knockdowns called and not called, and back and forth. It ended up being a split decision in Glanton's favor because he scored a knockdown, a wicked knockdown that actually should have been a knockout at the very end of the 6th round of the 10. He knocked Apoche into the ropes. And it's one of those occasions many of us have seen before where an opponent's knocked out and he's cold, but instead of hitting the canvas, the ropes hold him up. And he was out. But somehow he stayed on his feet. Referee waved, it was right at the bell. He counted him. He got back to his corner, managed to survive the rest of the fight. How the hell he did that was just sheer muscle memory. He buzzed Glanton a few times himself. These guys, it was a razor thin nail biter waiting for the judges. Terrific fight, gritty, very good, and a quality fight, not just a smack fest, not sloppy. These guys both have skills. So, of course, we want to see a rematch. They both claim they're willing to do it. But these, win or lose, both of these guys are really promising additions to the cruiserweight division, and particularly Glanton, an American cruiserweight of real promise. So keep an eye out. Brandon Glanton, F.A. Apoche, terrific fighters. And then the main event was super middleweight David Morrell Jr., who's got minor title. He's originally from Cuba. His challenger is Mario Cesar, and he was undefeated. So again, 2-0s, and Morrell just pounded Cesar's, one of those one-hitter quitter knockout punches near the end of the first round. Out of nowhere, sensational, crazy. I scared my dogs yelling. Morrell said he saw the opening. He saw his legs wobble. He knew he was gone, and he took him completely out. And he says, hey, I'll fight anyone at 168. Caleb Plant was in the audience. He said, I want Plant. I'm ready. Bring it. He's an excellent boxer, but I'm ready to go. And, he has big dreams, thinks big. He performed big last night. But again, I'm just delighted that this card was on free broadcast American television. 3 fights that for casual fans or people who don't observe boxing a lot, they were all enjoyable, all action-packed, easy to watch, and especially in the co-main and the main, a lot of skill on display. So well done, everybody. Well done, TGB Promotions, for putting this thing together. Super, super card. Great matchmaking.
Indeed. Thanks for the breakdown of that fight. Molov says in the chat, bummer he missed it. How were we supposed to know about that card? PBC needs to step up their marketing.
Well, if you were watching any sports on Fox, they did advertise it. It was out there. Again, I warmly recommend, as I did earlier in the broadcast, Dan Raphael always used to keep the boxing schedule up on the ESPN website. He was the keeper of the schedule. He's continued to do that in his Substack newsletter, Fight Freaks Unite. So get on Substack, subscribe. It's free, at least at this point. And he's still maintaining the schedule. Once a week, he sends out the updated schedule with all the main cards and the networks. So plug for that. Otherwise, you just got to scour Box Rec, man.
One last bit of news that just got into my head, and I wrote about this for Three Kings Boxing. I think it's going to drop this evening on threekingsboxing.com. Best source for boxing news and information. Best source for boxing information. Excuse me. Eddie Hearn, speaking to IFL TV, touched on a myriad of topics involving Matchroom, and one of the things was he gave a rundown of his fight schedule for the rest of the summer and early fall. Within that, Daniel, he mentioned that October 16th, he hopes to have the trilogy between Juan Francisco Estrada and Roman Gonzalez some point in the States, I should say. Now, the two fought in March. Right now, it's my leading candidate for Fight of the Year, right? Estrada got the decision split. A lot of people felt that Chocolatito deserved the verdict. WBC subsequently lifted Gallo Estrada to franchise status. WBC title at 115 vacant, proposed a four-man tournament. Gallo and Chocolatito in one kind of semifinal, SSR and Quadras in another. Your reaction to at least Hearn is that throwing out there a date for Chocolatito and Gallo Estrada 3?
Well, I'm glad it's been the date. That will make it 7 months since the fight in March. And if you wanted to have it in other locations, hopefully by then a lot more things are open because you did pick Texas because it was one of the few locations at the time that was actually letting crowds to the size they wanted to have on there. By October, barring the pandemic, being the pandemic, we should be able to have more open availability going into because this would be a perfect fight for Madison Square Garden in New York. Or if they really, really wanted to go like really, really new, there's that new arena out here that the New York Islanders are going to open. Fairly, they're going to open this year, so that's going to be fun. Or there's other avenues, like say you could take it to Vegas, you could take it to California. Hell, you could take it to Miami. Like I said, I've always been surprised that they have never been able to capitalize on the fact that Miami has the largest population of Nicaraguan Americans or people of Nicaraguan descent in the U.S. That's a built-in audience for Chocolatito. So,
yeah, I would say though his guaranteed audience is on the West Coast, Los Angeles in particular. I mean, that's a fight that, the truth is it's really built for the Forum, old school venue. They've been there before, both of them. Um, I'm not sure if they could put in enough people to pack the Staples Center, but it's possible. Um, I certainly wouldn't begrudge a Miami fight. I think that makes more sense. Honestly, I think Miami or even Texas makes more sense than the East Coast, but certainly I think it belongs in LA. And I have some very selfish reasons for thinking that would be a really good idea. And I'm
well,
fine with Vegas too.
yeah, actually, let's just make sure. Like, if we're gonna get it, you have to get it on the Forum before
I,
Steve Ballmer decides to do what he actually wants to do with the Forum, which is
well,
kind of scary for NBA fans.
you're right, right, gotcha.
First of all, I want to apologize if you hear some music playing in the background and neighbors decide to all of a sudden blast their music all of a sudden during the middle of my show, rude as hell. Anyway, uh, any thoughts on this bout landing StubHub?
Too small.
Yeah, it's too
Uh,
big.
Venue. This fight, yeah, this fight's really, really big. StubHub on a good night with no extra bleachers or standing room added, the official capacity is 8,200. Um, they can get it to 9,000 pretty easily. And when they really are playing fast and loose with jamming people in there, they can get it just a shade above 10,000, which they did for Golovkin and Rubio, which is their all-time attendance record for boxing. It's kind of interesting. That's not big enough. The sweet spot would be, 15,000 people. I don't think you want it anywhere too much bigger. I'd rather have a little tiny bit smaller venue packed to the rafters and going nuts. And you'd guarantee that at somewhere like the Forum. I also, although I wouldn't, personally love this too much, it would not be the worst idea in the world to have it in Mexico. But I think because of COVID, the U.S. is probably at this point the safest place to have it if it's going to happen anytime soon.
and so, yeah, glad to hear that Hearn at least given a date, location. That's to be determined. But at the very least, the fight is going to happen, and the fight is going to happen early fall, and boxing fans given their first two battles. Uh, can't wait, can't wait. Let's hope the trilogy is good as the first two fights. Let's move on to preview some fights here. One main fight to talk about in the preview. That is Chris Colbert, who's defending a version of the WBA lightweight, WBA junior lightweight title. Excuse me. Initially was going to fight Gamboa. Gamboa had to step out due to injury. And I just think he's just too beat up. His body's just too beat up at this point. He's what, 38 years old. Not too long ago that he had that Achilles injury, right? Instead, going to fight King Tug.
Well,
Tux Tugstsog Russell, I want to say in 2019 it was, gave him a real good tussle. I think a decent scrap. Russell ran away with it over the second half of the bout, but he's returning to the ring to face Colbert. I know King Tug is a natural 26 pounder, while Colbert is a natural 30 pounder. But if we're talking skill wise here, Gail and Daniel, um, Colbert he's largely untested, and I think that King Tug has a chance to give him um, a really, really good scrap here. Your thoughts?
it's going to be fun. It is going to be a fun fight, and it adds a little bit more of a dimension into the 130 picture because when it comes to 130, we all know the fight we actually want to have. Herring versus Valdez. That's the fight to make. But this fight could also throw a new contender to that ring and maybe give somebody like Shakur Stevenson, if he doesn't get Herring or Valdez, a good opponent. And it's a similar situation with Tank where you're not actually getting the real belt, but you're getting some type of leverage. Even so, it would work. It will work. It'll be an interesting fight, though. I have a feeling that Colbert's going to win this one.
Interesting that you mentioned Shakur, uh, Colbert, and Shakur. They got history going back to their amateur days where Shakur, he claims that doing at an amateur tournament, they kind of had like not an in the ring amateur fight, but a little spur of the moments sparring session in a hotel the week of that tournament, and Shakur says he beat him up. This is in response to Brian Custer asking about a fight, asking Colbert about a fight against Shakur, and he said he would beat him. And so there's history between the two. Back to you, Gail, in terms of this fight between Colbert and King Tug. Your thoughts?
I like it. King Tug is a late replacement, and I think that was a really inspired choice. This fight's taking place in Carson at the Dignity Health Sports Park, aka StubHub.
StubHub.
Y'all call it that. The War Grounds, if you will, is a neutral title at least. There's a big enough Southeast Asian community that Tug, who's from Mongolia, will get some support from the Asian American community in Southern California. So that's kind of fun. And he's only got the one loss to Gary Russell. It was pretty one-sided, but he did go the distance. So, give him credit for that. It also gets him back into the ring. He hasn't had a fight since late last year, so I like that. I like the fact that he said yes on short notice. He was ready to go. He lives in Los Angeles, so that's a pretty, it just fell into place. It made a lot of sense. I do think it will be real competitive. Colbert's record is impressive. He's undefeated, but he's not particularly powerful. So he did score a knockout in his last fight, but it took him 11 rounds of 12 to do it against Jaime Orboleta. Um, so I think Tug, who's pretty aggressive, will think to himself, I don't think I got a lot to worry about from this guy, and he's going to come right at him. So that's fan friendly. They're in the right venue for it. And there's that StubHub fairy dust, right? That sort of magical stuff that takes place there. So for that reason alone, I will not miss this.
Absolutely, absolutely. There is some magic concerning StubHub. I can't remember what we were part of a group chat Friday, and I can't remember who said this. A private Zoom chat. I can't remember who said this. StubHub is becoming like the West Coast version of the Blue Horizon, the old Blue Horizon in Philadelphia.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, it's been that
yeah,
it's been that way for the past 2 decades. So
and Yolanda in the live YouTube chat, she said that she interviewed Chris back in May. He looks in good shape and he's motivated. She thinks that would be a good fight. Yes, Olaf, we talked about Tank Davis earlier in the show at the very beginning of the show. If you want to rewind either now or once at the conclusion of this live show, please do so and to hear our comments about Tank, his fight against Barrios, and what could be up for him potentially down the line. Um, so yeah, Colbert and King Tug, I think is going to be a good fight as well. It's going to happen July 3rd in the StubHub. I will call it StubHub. I don't care what new name they give on it. Place is always and will be StubHub to me. So not a fight to be slept on. If you're looking for some boxing on this quote unquote holiday weekend,
The only
please
game
check
in
us
town,
out.
folks. The only game in town.
Right. Only really major fight that weekend of that weekend. So I think we're going to start to shut the show down on that note. Before I go to the panel, I want to thank Olaf the Mighty. I want to thank Yolanda Cortez for their comments and their questions. Appreciate you checking us out live. If you haven't before, please hit that like button. Also, please make sure to subscribe if you're checking out the show. Um, at a later date from this live episode, or if you're checking us out on the podcast realm, uh, YouTube, make sure to hit that live like and subscribe button. If you're checking us out on, say, a Spotify, a Apple Podcast, a Spreaker, or Anchor, any and everywhere else in between, please sure to subscribe. If you're not on Spotify, please make sure to subscribe to the show. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please make sure to subscribe and leave a review. 5-star review will get read on the show. Anchor, please make sure to subscribe. If you want to hit a donate button on that Anchor, uh, uh, on Pound for Pound Boxing Anchor, please do. Any little contribution will help. I don't care if it's $1, $5, 50 cents, whatever you can share. It will help the overall production of the show behind the scenes. Going to go around the panel here. Begin with ladies first. Going to end with ladies first. Gail from Communities Digital News for those who want to talk the sweet science. Uh, for those who want to talk, for those who want to check you out on the bye week on TMZ. You are on TMZ live occasionally. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Well, it's all about boxing right here. So you can find my regular boxing column at Communities Digital News, which is COMM, Digi News.com. And I post to a lot of the better Facebook groups on boxing, which are always sort of fun to follow. So if you follow any of the big ones, I am usually posted there as well once my columns are live.
I'll go to you, Daniel. Daniel from the Inscriber and For Boxing News for those who want to talk the sweet science. For those who want to talk the NBA, especially as it pertains to the Miami Heat, we're not in the playoffs still. If you want to check out the latest updates on the Miami Heat, the latest updates on the NBA, this show is being aired live um, during Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals between the Clippers and the Suns. Looks like the Clippers are coming to play tonight. Their season is on the line. Um, let the folks know where they can find you, Daniel.
yes, folks, you can find me on Twitter at Ruckus99, RAWKZ99, and you might want to head up before then because Pat Beverly. Oh no, yeah, that
Pat
foul on Chris
Beverly,
Paul. Yeah,
Pat Beverly being Pat Beverly.
yeah. Like okay, Chris Paul did commit a bit of floppery, as is tradition with Chris Paul. But yeah, that was kind of uncalled for. So, but yeah, it looks like this might be heading to a game 6, which is a good thing. Like this would be in the Staples Center. Then, if that's the case, and depending on what Bomber does, like I said, it's one of the reasons I mentioned when talking about Chocolatito fight. They better get to the forum fast because the
For
forum
those
was
who don't know, let people know, boxing related or any otherwise, the plans of Bomber and vis-a-vis the old school LA Forum.
well, Steve. Well, Steve Ballmer, the owner of the Clippers, has been wanting to have the Clippers be in their own arena for a while now. Ever since he bought the team, he doesn't want to share with Staples Center with the Lakers anymore. So one of the groups that he owns just bought the Forum, which sounds like a nice thing until you realize he apparently wants to build a brand new arena where the Forum stands, either next to it or exactly where the Forum stands. So even though the Forum has gone through a massive amounts of renovation, it looks beautiful. It may be living on borrowed time.
Yeah, if he wants to plan a new build a new stadium there, that means he's going to blow up the Forum, the old school Forum. Um, One of the staples of the sport, particularly not just the Los Angeles Lakers, but one of the staples of boxing. One of the reasons I gravitated to the sport and fell in love with the sport was when I was a kid, and I used to sneak and stay up in my preteens and early teen years, watching fights on from the forum. That's how I got to know about Chiquita Gonzalez. Hell, that's how I got to know about a U.S. fighter, Mark Too Sharp Johnson. They brought him out there to the forum basically as an opponent in '93. He upset a highly ranked Mexican, and he basically ripped through the Mexican flyweight circuit, working his way up to the title. Um, Paul Banky, Daniel Zaragoza, uh, uh, Melchor Carp Castro, um, Oscar De La Hoya. I think his debut was in at the Forum. The late Gennaro Hernandez. Uh, he built his career um, 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 in the Forum. So uh, a lot of the prominent fighters and world champions on the West Coast, particularly in the 80s, throughout the 90s, they got their start. They built their careers. They became household name through the Forum. Boxing After Dark, the first Boxing After Dark, the classic fight between Marco Antonio Barrera and Kennedy McKinney. Where did it take place? The Forum. It still has value towards the sport, and it would be a really, really awful thing if it was done with. It was based literally, for lack of a better word, blown up. Just for basketball stadium where they can build it in other places in LA. Come on, come on, do better, do better.
Yeah,
Uh,
this actually hurts in a level for me in a way because it's not so much because of my ties to LA, because it reminds me of a similar situation we've had with the Orange Bowl here in Miami, where everybody knows what the Orange Bowl was, everybody knows what it stood for, everybody knows the history of it, and unfortunately, it got demolished, and now Marlins Park stands in its way, and it's just something that where it's never the same again in that aspect. Yes, you have games in Marlins Park, football games that are really good, that turn out to be pretty good, but it's not the same as the OB. I don't want that to happen to the Forum, but unfortunately, it looks like Bombers at least needling in that direction.
yeah, and that would be truly, truly sad. Don't need it. It's not necessary. Again, Bomber, uh, please have a change. Let's please have a change of heart here, and then decide to go another route. If for those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, you know it is. Brother JR 76. Want to give a bit of a shout out to Max Kellerman, who on his show Max Unboxing, um, he has on his Twitter timeline before his show. He basically gives out a question for any and everybody who wants to ask a personal question that gets answered on the show. And fortunately, yours truly, my question about regarding a question regarding Naoya Inoue was featured on the show. Humble brag, not just featured on the show. It was his very first question. So give a shout out to Max Kellerman from Max Unboxing and from First Take. Um, just throwing this out there. I'm happy that was that he asked my question. It would be really a good look if I could ever get him on the show to chop it up with boxing with us. But anyway, I'm
Well,
just throwing it
now
out
you got an inroad, man. You got an inroad now. For those
Oh
of you
yeah.
who watch the show regularly, it's the feature at the very end called "Max Me Anything." That's the hashtag "Max Me Anything," and I'm watching it, and boom, they said "Brother Jr." I went, "Whoa, wait a minute! I know that guy."
Yeah.
Very, very
Yeah.
good question, by the way. If you want to repeat it here, you might let the folks know what you asked and basically
Oh, thank
what he
you,
said.
Gail. I didn't see it live, but thank you, Gail, for bringing it to my attention Friday night. The question was basically, should in a way fight the winner of the upcoming August 14th unification showdown between WBC bantamweight champion Nonito Donaire and WBO champion John Rael Casamayor. Should he fight the winner and ultimately become undisputed champion at 118 pounds? How far would that move in a way up the pound for pound rankings? And Max answered that question. His response was basically it as impressive as that would be, it would only move him up so far. I believe he said would move him up to number two, based on the fact that Canelo has fought to a higher level of competition. He went on to say, should in a way move up and win titles at 122, 126, the lot, and defeat the better fighters in that division, it would get to a point where in a way could not be denied. He acknowledged that in a way is a sensational fighter, but if he keeps on this current path at a higher weight, yeah, people will have to bear witness that in a way is the best pound for pound fighter in the world. So yeah, that was the question. That was his response. Thank you again to Max Kellerman for taking my question and answering it on Max Unboxing. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk about fitness, music, you know what it is. Brother JR at Brother JR76 on Twitter. As I said at the beginning of the show, if you want to find out all of information about Pound for Pound Box Report, the blog/website is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.com. Just navigate throughout the page with in terms of how to find the show on the podcast realm, on social media, uh, where you can donate, the link to my online coaching page. And if you want to email us question, comment, whatnot, any suggestions, you can email the show at p4pboxing. You can email the show p4pboxing at p4pboxing report. Let me repeat that: p4pboxing at p4pboxing report. On the next episode, we will do a recap of Chris Colbert and King Tug Nyambayar. We will also do a preview of Tim Zoo and Michael Zerafa should that fight come off. We earlier talked about how there's a bit of a danger of that fight not happening because the new strain of COVID-19, the numbers are rising in Australia. And we'll do a preview of that bout if it does come out off. And we do a preview of the zone call that's taking place in LA. Gilberto Ramirez fighting Sullivan Barrera in a lightweight bout. Jojo Diaz fighting Javier Fortuna for the WBC interim belt. Sinicia Estrada fighting for a world title at junior flyweight. Salim Urbina, please go to threekingsboxing.com. You can check out my interview that I did with Salim Urbina, who's fighting for the WBA flyweight title. Very good interview in my estimation. We touched on a lot, her upcoming fight, her previous fight, how she thinks about a comparison between men's and women's boxing in terms of how men and women train, and her belief that women, they do more work in the gym, they stay more consistent. In her words, that when women come to train for a bout, they actually train for a bout, while when most men come train for a bout, it's basically a fat camp where the focus is more on losing weight and whatnot. And so we touched on that, the issue of mental health as well in the aftermath of Ryan Garcia and a whole host of other things. So please check out threekingsboxing.com. Check out the Facebook page, and specifically where you can find that audio, find that video of that. And so yeah, we will talk about that card out there in LA. So again, I want to thank Yolanda. I want to thank Olaf, for Gail from Communities Digital News, uh, Daniel from the Inscriber and Ford Boxing News. This has been episode 331 of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I'm your host, Michael. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.
Good night, except for the Canadians.